Welcome back to the Football Fellowship podcast, where we're going to be talking about Game Week 2 in the Premier League with a particular focus on Chelsea beating Wolverhampton Wanderers 6-2 thanks to a Noni Madueke hat-trick, Arsenal edging past Aston Villa thanks to super sub Leandro Trossard, Spurs demolishing a very poor Everton side 4-0, Brighton beating Manchester United 2-1 thanks to a 95th minute winner from Joao Pedro, and Ipswich Town's struggle to the Premier League continues after losing to Manchester City 4-1 and thanks to the hat-trick of Erling Haaland. I'm going to start off with Wolves 2, Chelsea 6, and there was a bit of needle in this game before a ball was even kicked. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure you can find a picture of it on social media. Noni Madueke, the man who actually got a hat-trick in this game, posted roughly around midnight on his Instagram story that the area of Wolves in general was not a very nice place to be, and he came out later and apologised, saying he didn't mean it. Yes, he definitely meant it, but he was trying to put it on his private Instagram account. What ended up happening was every time he got the ball, he ended up getting booed. But in this game, he ended up getting the hat trick and then he ends up silencing the people of Wolverhampton Wanderers. But it was actually Nicolas Jackson who ended up getting the first goal in this game in the second minute. Very poor goal from the Wolves' perspective to be conceding. Just a simple corner. The corner gets flicked on at the front post and Nicolas Jackson is completely unmarked at the back post. But as a result of his goal and the celebration, there's a bit of needle between the Wolves players and the Chelsea players. I think Matheus Cunha in general does go over and it does get a bit heated at times, and that kind of builds up as the game goes on. 27 minutes on the clock, Matheus Cunha ends up getting a goal, this time with the assist from Aït-Nouri. And I thought it was a fantastic goal from the Wolves' perspective, pressing Chelsea very high up, Bellegarde dispossessing Caicedo in midfield, Ryan running all the way to the edge of the Chelsea box and then finding Matheus Cunha and slotting it home. And then in the celebrations, obviously there's a bit of needle between Cunha and Nicolas Jackson again, and that kind of theme carries on throughout the entire of this game. And I think to myself, I think there was a game under maybe it was Frank Lampard when Chelsea very early on had a game against Wolverhampton Wanderers, which was very high scoring, and that kind of gave me vibes of this one as well. I didn't realize there were going to be 8 goals in this game. It definitely didn't feel like it as well. But then from there, Chelsea end up getting getting a Cole Palmer goal, just before half time, and an assist from Nicolas Jackson. And in fact, it came from the Wolves free kick, which went all the way to the goalkeeper, ended up going after a goal kick. And then Robert Sanchez just absolutely route one, hoofs it all the way to the other side of the pitch. Nicolas Jackson gets on the end of it. He lobs it over the last Wolves defender. And then Cole Palmer ends up lobbing it over Jose Sa, who ends up coming for the initial long ball from the goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez. And then he ends up in no man's man. And Cole Palmer lobs in to make it 2-1 just before half time. However, that is not the only goal before half time, because Wolves end up equalising in the 45th plus 6th minute of added time in the first half. Strand Larsen with his first goal for Wolverhampton Wanderers. Very important that he ended up getting off the score sheet because it's going to be vital for them going forward. He ends up getting a toe to a cross from Gomez, and then he ends up beating Robert Sanchez. So it's 2-2 even before half time, and what a game we have on. But then in the second half, it ends up being all Chelsea, and Wolves definitely lost the way in it. Noni Madueke with a hat-trick in the 49th minute, 63rd and 63rd minute again. And they all came from a Cole Palmer assist as well. 3 goals to Madueke, 3 assists for Cole Palmer. And it's one where all 3 of the goals were kind of very similar, very same area of the pitch. The first one is with his left foot, he ends up getting a bit of deflection, beating Jose Sa. And the second 2 were both with his right foot, just, in transition. Wolves are very poor. Chelsea ended up nicking the ball off them every time. And Ryan Aït-Nouri, he's meant to be there at left back, ended up bombing up the field and he ends up getting caught out of position, which leaves the left centre back of Wolves constantly exposed. And, against Noni Madueke, who has a fantastic strike on him, as we knew and as he reminded us in this game, he ends up getting 3 goals. And, from that point on, Wolves are nowhere to be seen. But then it only gets better for Chelsea and worse for Wolves as Joao Felix comes off the bench along with Pedro Neto, former Wolves player and recently joined Chelsea, back at Molineux. And in this one, he ends up making the cross for Joao Felix on the edge of the box and becomes 6-2 to Chelsea. And there's been a lot of talk in and around Chelsea about, they've been signing too many players. What's the plan going forward? What's the vision for all these players? They've got too many on the books. Maresca saying he's only working with a small amount of players and the rest aren't even with him. He's not working with them or engaging with them. And I think it does still show that Chelsea are recruiting good players that can improve their side. It's just that it's not coherent and doesn't make much sense when you haven't offloaded half of them yet. But I think if you think about the players that they have brought in, Joao Felix, Pedro Neto, these are players who are going to make the Chelsea starting 11 better. And as you can see, that they've been scoring and assisting. And in terms of the players that they already have, Nicolas Jackson is slowly improving. He was bad in that Man City game. He is slowly improving, getting a goal in this one here. Noni Madueke, his ceiling could only get better and better. Cole Palmer in that number 10 position, as maybe we highlighted that Enzo Fernandez wasn't the best player for that. He would need to be playing a little bit deeper. And I think in this one, with Romeo Lavia being out with a slight knock, the decision was made for Maresca. It was easy. Caicedo and Enzo and someone in the number 10 position. He decided to go with Cole Palmer and Christian Runke not in the squad at all. Well, he was in the squad, sorry, he's on the bench. But I think that kind of maybe highlighted the fact that, going forward, fast, pacey wingers and Nkunku or Cole Palmer in number 10. But after that performance, can he drop Cole Palmer? Probably not. That's definitely got to be the side that we see next week against Crystal Palace at home. I think that's the side that it can probably cause them the most damage. Maybe even Pedro Neto off the left-hand side. I think the defence of Chelsea still needs to be a little bit of work. I'm not sure if Robert Sanchez is the best goalkeeper in the world. I'm not sure if that back four, they're a very young back four. Maybe just give them a bit more time together. I think that's what they probably need, a bit more consistency. But I do think there's some promising signs for Chelsea going forward. We probably have them, depending on your expectations, you might have them finishing as low down as like 10th. But, probably the maximum they'll probably achieve this season is 4th place. But if they were to get 4th and European football again, I think that'd be a fantastic season for Enzo Maresca. But yeah, lots of positives for Chelsea take. And for Wolves, I think that second half they just lost their heads a little bit. I mean, the defending was poor. I think they lost the ball in transition far too easily. I think it was just a bad second half. I think the first half they weren't great, but they were definitely posing Chelsea a lot more of a threat. In that second half, everything that they were doing good completely got lost. And I think it's just a bad one for Wolves and Gary O'Neill. And, the next game is Nottingham Forest away. I think that's a pretty decent game for them to go on back on the road and try and get some points there, because in the first 2 games were Arsenal away, Chelsea down. It's not the easiest start, and Nottingham Forest have got to a decent start off in the Premier League season so far, but that's an opportunity for Wolves to get some points before the international break, because you definitely don't want to have 0 before the international break, because all eyeballs will be on Molineux. And the second game is Aston Villa 0, Arsenal 2. And coming into this game, there was a lot of tension around it because of the fact that Arsenal only lost the league to Man City by 2 points last season. And in the both games against Aston Villa, they lost both times. So this is definitely one coming into it, if you're from an Arsenal perspective, that they had to win and they had to put it right. And they did exactly that. However, it didn't come easy to them. I actually thought that Aston Villa were the better side on the day. I thought that in their out of possession, Aston Villa made it really hard for Arsenal. They were kind of playing in the mid-block. They weren't really pressing too high. They were letting the centre-backs and goalkeeper have the ball, and they were saying, okay, what are you going to do with it? But anytime the ball went in the midfield, they were pressing incredibly aggressively. And anytime the ball went out wide, they were making sure they didn't have too much space for them to run into in behind the Aston Villa defence. And I thought that Unai Emery made it incredibly hard for Arsenal to get anything from this game. I thought that Morgan Rogers was absolutely fantastic, and he definitely showed to the entire Premier League and the entire world watching that he is a player. He's an absolute baller who's going to have a very bright future. 5 out of 7 successful dribbles. There's one in the first half where he sends Declan Rice to the shops twice before then running through the entire Arsenal midfield and through the back line before putting a very dangerous ball into the box. And there's one in the second half where he absolutely bodies Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey, who's got a Champions League experience with Atletico Madrid and Arsenal, who's a very, very capable defensive midfielder. At some points was one of the best in the world. And Morgan Rogers just breezes past and knocks him off the ball completely before creating another dangerous chance. And he's one where it wasn't just his attacking play. Defensively, he was really solid as well. So definitely one to keep an eye on. But from the Aston Villa perspective, before Arsenal even get the first goal, you might think to yourself, they need to be 2 goals ahead, because Ollie Watkins didn't have a pre-season because he was away with England, and he's only just come back into the side just in time for the first game of the season against West Ham, which they did win last week, Aston Villa. And in this one, 2 chances. First one is when Morgan Rogers dispossesses the Arsenal midfield on the edge of their box, passes it to Ollie Watkins, and if you look at the still, he needs to absolutely be scoring. And if you don't score, the very minimum that Ollie Watkins needs to be doing in that situation is hitting the target. The fact that he ends up skewing the ball wide of the post and doesn't even give David Raya a save to make is absolutely criminal for a player of the quality of Watkins. And we saw what he did in the Euros. We saw what he did all of last season. He's a better striker than that. He needs to be hitting the target. And the second one, if you pull the steal just before Ollie Watkins is about to head the ball, David Raya is completely on the floor in that second half, and there's no way he should be making that save. And Ollie Watkins ends up putting it to David Raya's left, to his right, but Raya ends up making a fantastic save. And there's 2 sides to every story. From Aston Villa, you're saying Watkins should be scoring, and if you're an Arsenal fan, you're saying what a save by David Raya. One of the best saves that we've seen in the Premier League for a while. Maybe another contender for save of the season already. Stretching all the way down there to your left-hand side. And, fair play to David Raya. Watkins should be doing better. But I think it's one where Raya there definitely highlighted the fact that he had some criticism last season because of the situation, and I don't think Arteta helped that with him and Aaron Ramsdale competing for the number one position. He definitely should have come out and just said, David Raya is my number one. He didn't say that. He brought on the media scrutiny itself, and he fueled the fire rather than putting it out very early on. But I think one of the fair criticisms was, does he make enough big saves? And I think this was a perfect highlight of the fact that, yes, David Raya does have that in his locker. He can make those world-class saves to keep Arsenal into it. He made one last week as well against Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think a header from Sean Larson, which was a fantastic save to his right-hand side. This time to his left-hand side. And, it's definitely one of those where if Raya can make those saves along the course of his season, then I think, he's really going to show people that he is a world-class goalkeeper. But eventually, Arsenal did end up getting themselves ahead. And it was super sub Leandro Trossard, who came off of Martinelli, who I didn't think had the best game in this one, I'll be honest. And it is one where after Trossard got the goal, I think he needs to be starting next week. Because I just think that, Martinelli, bad form, Trossard in good form. And I think you saw from his celebration, he wasn't too happy about being benched. But from Aston Villa, it's very disappointing how you conceded the goal. Luka Dean just switches off a little bit. Bukayo Saka ends up running for a ball, which he thinks is harmless, and we're just going to get out for play. He keeps it in. Morgan Rogers, as I praised him earlier on, should do better with this one and clearing the ball sooner, but he ends up fumbling it a little bit. He takes a bit of a heavy touch, and it ends up being Leandro Trossard to make it 1-0. And then 10 minutes later, in the 77th minute, they end up making it 2-0. Thomas Partey from the distance, right on the edge of the box, and I think we can all agree that Emiliano Martinez should be doing better. He gets a firm left hand to it, and he should be pushing it just wide. But at the end of the day, I think that Arsenal will be very, very happy with the 3 points on this one. An XG of only 0.87. I don't think they were the better side on the day, but winning ugly is, a very important factor in the title winning team. And to go away to Villa Park, get 3 points against your former manager, against a side who you really struggled with last season, I think this is 3 points that Arsenal can definitely be very happy with. And the next game was Tottenham Hotspurs 4, Everton 0. And both sides came into this game with a lot to prove. Spurs, after only drawing 1-1 against newly promoted Leicester on the Monday Night Football, and Everton losing 3-0 at home to Brighton and Hove Albion. Both sides would have been disappointed with the results and would have wanted to come into this game and prove the doubters wrong. Spurs did that. Everton, not so much. Let's start off with Spurs, who in this game made 3 changes. They brought in Kulusevski, Bissouma, and Wilson Odobert, who recently signed from Burnley. And it was Bissouma who ended up getting the goal initially with the assist from Dejan Kulusevski. Kulusevski, great feet in the box, passing it out wide to Bissouma. And Bissouma with an absolute rocket into the top corner, hitting the crossbar on its way in. And there's nothing Jordan Pickford can do about that one. Something that Jordan Pickford probably should have done better with is the second goal. Tarkowski ends up playing the ball back to Pickford. Pickford ends up taking a heavy touch with the left foot as he tries to put the ball out from his feet, and he gets dispossessed by Heung-min Son on the last man, absolutely no one around him, and Son has a tap in. And then 25 minutes gone, Spurs are already 2-0 up, and you just think to yourself, with the lack of goals that Everton have on the side, as we talked about consistently last season, already being 2-0 down away from home, are Everton going to come back in the game? Probably not. And Spurs only kicked on from that as well. In the 71st minute, it was 3-0. It was Romero from a header. I think that was a very disappointing one, considering the fact that it was Romero who had a very easy run into the 6-yard box, just out-jumped Tarkowski way too easily, and just another header really it was just too easy. It was just really, really too easy. There's nothing Jordan Pickford can do about it because of the power that Romero gets into it. That one I'm looking at Tarkowski, and the fact that no one was blocking Romero's run, no one even made it hard for him to get in that position. I think that was really, really poor, and I think Sean Dyche would be very upset in the way his team conceded that goal. And the fourth one was just Everton going for it right at the end. And then Mickey van der Ven gets the ball on the edge of his own box, drives all the way into the Everton half, all the way to the edge of their box. He passes the ball to Heung-min Son. He takes it with his left foot. You think the chance is gone, but then he ends up putting it in between Pickford's legs and to make it 4-0. And yeah, for Spurs, a much, much, much needed win after drawing away to Leicester City. They dominated Leicester in that first half, up until probably, let's say, the 60th minute. But then Leicester really came into the game, and they ended up not winning the game that they should have done, considering the chances they had, they didn't quite take them. This one, Dominic Solanke was out injured. Heung-min Son ended up playing up front with Dejan Kulusevski in the 10, with Wilson Odobert on the left, and with Brennan Johnson on the right. And I think that this team was a much better one than the one that played against Leicester. They created chances, and most importantly, they took him. For me, Dominic Solanke, if he's back fit, he automatically goes back in that side. I just think it's one where it gives Ange Postecoglou something to think about. Maybe depending on the opposition of who you're going to come against, maybe you don't need to play Dominic Solanke in every game, and Heung-min Son, can still do a fantastic job up front, like he did do for a large part of last season. But it also showed that maybe long term he's not the solution. Dominic Solanke is the solution. And for Everton, worrying signs, losing 3-0 at home to Brighton, now 4-0 away to Spurs. I think we can all accept the fact that you can lose games of football, but to lose games of football when you play that badly and to let the scoreline get as big as it does, that's a bit of a worry. I will say that last season, Everton lost all 3 of their first 3 games before the international break. In the first 5 games of last season, they won none, drew 1, and lost 4. The one they drew and they got points were against Sheffield United, and we all know how poor Sheffield United were last season. And so I'm not too worried about Everton, despite the fact that they lost 3-0 at home and 4-0 away. They didn't score in the first 3 games of last season either. They look like they might not score in the first 3 games of this season as well. It is just the fact that they're starting very poorly, despite the fact that they have made some transfers. I mean, Ashley Young getting a red card in the last game was very, very disappointing, and one where he probably didn't need to make it, and he could have just let Matoma run through straight on goal. It meant that the young right back Dixon ended up coming in. Roman Quinton. Dixon, I'm talking about someone else. Roman Quinton ended up coming in. He did it right, but what do you expect from a young right back? He can't really do much. And there's not a whole lot of positives, but just the fact that I don't think Everton are in any trouble. The goal difference doesn't look great. The fact that they're bottom of the table quite convincingly doesn't look great, but I just think that they'll end up winning at some point during the course of the season. Probably right now, there's a lot of eyeballs on every single team because games are only midweek. Summer holidays are still on, so students are at home, kids are at home, everyone's watching the football, everyone's got an eye on it. After the international break, when all the kids have gone to school, there's midweek fixtures all of a sudden. There's Champions League midweek, Europa League fixtures midweek. All of a sudden, there's cup competitions, Carabao Cup. All of a sudden, when the eyeballs aren't on Everton, they'll win 1-0. And all of a sudden, you'll be like, oh yeah, classic Everton. And then all of a sudden, 10 games into the season, your mate you'll be talking to, you'll be asking, oh, who's won the league? And someone will go, oh, it's Everton. And then you go, oh no, they've picked up 5 to 6 points. And I think that's just Everton in a nutshell. I think that's how they'll be over this season as well. I don't have any worries about them being in the relegation zone. And I don't think that Sean Dyche will end up getting sacked. I think Everton will be fine. They'll be between 12th and 16th, I think. And a bad start. It seems like a characteristic that's typical of Sean Dyche and his Everton side. One is that he probably needs to break, and if they can get a win at home against Bournemouth next week, that'd be great. But for Tottenham Hotspur next week, Newcastle United away, a big fixture. If they can get 3 points from there, that'd be huge for boosting them in the season going forward. But not too much to worry about for Spurs. A very good performance against a poor Everton side, an Everton side who I don't have worry about going forward, but they can at least conceded a few less. And next up, it is Brighton and Hove Albion 2, Manchester United 1. And in the 5 times that Erik ten Hag has managed Manchester United and played against Brighton in the league, they have lost 4 and only won once, which is a very damning stat if we're being honest, because Brighton are a very good side, but before then Brighton, Man United had the better Brighton for a fair bit, so it is one where it's becoming a bit of a worry. Brighton are becoming a bit of a bogey team for Manchester United, and when you think about the players that Brighton have, they've got some very good players. I mean, it's Danny Welbeck who opened the scoring with the Matoma assist. But if you think about the other players, Minter as well, Joao Pedro, Brighton are a very, very good side. And one that I think the game was very even, and I think a draw would have been a fair result. But Brighton getting the win, I think they'll be very happy with that. But I think Man United will be very disappointing in their defending in this one, especially for the first goal. I mean, we'll talk about the second goal as well. But the first goal, there were so many preventable things that could have happened. First of all, Diego Dello needs to close down Joao Pedro, who puts a cross into the box. He doesn't do that. Ball comes in. Harry Maguire, secondly, should be clearing that ball. He only's got less than 5 yards to make and just cleared quite easily. I know he's playing right centre back, but for a player who plays predominantly left centre back, has a very good left foot on him full, a player who's his weaker foot, he should be clearing that completely. And if not even with this header, I think he could have got there. Then you got to look at Mazraoui, who ends up not closing down Mitoma. And when you think about if you stop the game, if you watch the highlights, and you stop it just before Mitoma puts the ball in the back of the box, the United midfield actually gets back into a decent position, and the only place for that ball to go is exactly where Mitoma puts it, across the 6-yard box. So Mazraoui needs to do better there. Harry Maguire, again, I think he needs to be sticking a leg out, getting the ball out for a corner or just hoofing it away. He should absolutely be getting there. His reading of the play is much better than that, and he should be doing much better. And then finally, the last member of the defence, Lisandro Martinez. He's got Minter on the far post, but he should be able to see the danger ahead of him and realise that Danny Welbeck is completely marked. He needs to leave Minter free, and he needs to go up and take up Danny Welbeck. And I know everything happens quite quickly, but these are players who are playing at the highest level. And I think for that entire Man United backline need to be doing better. One mistake from all of them, Harry Maguire with two. And I think that is a very poor goal and a very soft goal if Everton now looks back on it that Man United conceded. And from Brighton's perspective, 1-0 up against Man United, what could be better? I think that Brighton's midfield, really did a number on the game. I think 38-year-old James Milner was the best midfielder on the pitch. From Bruno Fernandes, Kobbie Mainoo, Casemiro, you also think about Billy Gilmore and Joao Pedro, who was playing. James Milner was the best midfielder on the pitch, which says something from Man United, and I think that's probably a worry. But from Brighton, for someone who is that old, just to have that experience that he's had, won everything there is, to still put in a performance like that, I think you can be very happy with Milner going forward. Then we've got to talk about the fact that, Brighton could have made it 2-1, 2-0, sorry, I think it was. Danny Welbeck ended up hitting the crossbar from a free kick. James Milner ended up winning it. Diallo ends up pulling Milner back. He's complaining it wasn't a free kick. It was definitely a free kick. And then Minter ended up putting the ball in, and Welbeck, just outmuscles the entire Man United defence. Puts the ball on the crossbar, and it could have been 2-0. But then the game opens up a little bit, and Man United do make it 1-1 and equalise through Amad Diallo. I think it was a lovely ball by Kobbie Mainoo into Mazraoui, who ends up... Kobbie Mainoo ends up doing a lovely turn in the midfield, gets the ball to Mazraoui. Mazraoui ends up playing the ball to Diallo and times his run perfectly. Hinterwood should do a little bit better, should push Diallo out to his right-hand side. He doesn't do that. Kobbie Mainoo cuts in and he ends up putting it past Jason Steele in goal and gets a little bit of deflection of Van Hecke. I think the ball would have been going in anyway whatsoever, so that doesn't make too much of a difference. Man United could have found themselves 2-1 up in this game. It was just a freak goal from Joshua Zirkzee, which got disallowed. The game opens up a little bit when it's 1-1. Man United on the counter-attack. Bruno Fernandes ends up overlapping Diallo. He puts the ball into the box and, it completely passes Joshua Zirkzee, finds a way to the back post of Garnacho. Garnacho scores a goal, and that should have been it. That should have been 2-1 Man United. But right on the line, Joshua Zirkzee, the ball hits his knee on the line, and he's in an offside position, so the goal gets ruled out. It is a complete freak accident. Nothing Joshua Zirkzee could do anything about it. Maybe Garnacho could have done a little bit better by putting the ball into a corner. You can't blame him for just trying to hit the target in that position. He does exactly that. But I think maybe Bruno Fernandes should do a better job of putting the ball, because he's got time, he's got space. He could easily find Zirkzee straight away or Garnacho straight away with a bit more power on it. And I think it's one where actually, if anyone's at fault there, it's probably Fernandes. But yeah, another one where it's just a free goal. There's nothing Man United could do about it. But then it was ended up being Brighton who ended up getting the win. And for this one, as the ball comes in from the corner, every Man United player is in the box. As the ball comes out and finds its way to a dinger for the first time, United players try and close him down. That's completely right. But then as he plays the ball into the middle of the penalty area, the ball comes out and the ball comes back into the box and finds a dinger on the left-hand side. Three Brighton players completely unmarked on the back post. No Man United players anywhere near him. And I'm going to name and shame them, because as the ball comes back to a dinger, it is Scott McTominay, Joshua Zirkzee and Casemiro. All three of them completely leave their area, and it's the second phase of a set play. So you're still in your set play zones and your set play positioning, and you don't move from them. And the fact that they all run forward, and so as the dinger finds the ball to the back post, three Brighton players, if it wasn't Joao Pedro, it could have been two more. He puts the ball in the back of the net, and Brighton ended up getting the win. And when Man United defend that badly in these situations, you can have no complaints about the fact that Brighton ended up scoring too. I think a draw, like I said at the beginning of this review, draw was a fair result for both Brighton and United. I don't think either side did too much to win the game. Brighton probably edged it maybe, but I think a draw was a fair result. Both teams kind of go, okay, neither of us created any clear-cut chances to win that game. But Man United in the end just throw it away. Brighton end up winning it, and Brighton are now 2 games, 2 wins, and they've got Arsenal next, and that'll be a cracker of a game. I'm really excited to see that one. How do Arsenal do against the side who are competing for the league? Where are they really in terms of quality? And this manager of Fabian Hurlitzer doing a fantastic job so far, and I'm being really, really impressed with Brighton. Man United, on the other hand, interesting, and I want you guys to let me know, because are Man United more? I'm more convinced Man United will get a result against Liverpool next weekend after they've dropped points and lost the game against Brighton than there would be if they won the game. I think now there will be a reaction, and with it being Liverpool, I think they will play so much better. I think they'll be playing a lot deeper. I think they'll be contesting 50-50s a lot better, and I think there won't be the spaces in the midfield as there were in this game for Brighton to exploit. And it's a weird one, because I think this is the issue with Man United. They've got to win these type of games, and if you lose against Liverpool, that's okay. I know it's a rival, I know it's a derby, but if you lose against Liverpool, that's fine. It's unacceptable to losing to Brighton. And is it going to be one where it's another season of Man United winning one, losing one? Because if it is, I don't think anything's improved. Next up is Manchester City 4, Ipswich Town 1. And what I will say right from the off of this review of this game is that Ipswich Town, no one expected them to get any points from the first 2 games of Liverpool at home and Manchester City away. So don't get too disheartened, Ipswich Town fans, if you think to yourself, oh, we're nowhere near it. No, you're not meant to be anywhere near it. A newly promoted side, back-to-back promotions to the Premier League. Your squad isn't meant to be anywhere near good enough to compete with the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City. So the fact that you haven't got any points, if you did get anything from either of those 2 games, that would have been a bonus and a positive. But the fact that you haven't, it's okay. It's fine. No one expected anything else from you. But the fact is, the fact that Ipswich actually went ahead in this game against Man City, getting a goal through Sammy Smodics in the 7th minute, that was, that's something to put your hopes up to and to cling on to and say, you know what, although we're not quite good enough to compete with the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City, the fact that we can at least hurt them in some instances is something to take away from this game. And I think, it was a very soft goal for Man City to concede, if I'm being honest, but it's one where it showed the quality that Ipswich can have going forward. I mean, it's the fact that Hutchinson can just completely take the ball, dribble with it, and through the Man City midfield and to the right-hand side, and then completely run past Mateo Kovacic, who should probably do better, and then he can pass it to Ben Johnson, and then the timing of the run from Sami Smodric, that's exactly why you've bought him. 20 goals in the Championship last season, Championship top goal scorer for Blackburn Rovers, and I just think that, that pass, perfectly weighted pass, the timing of the run from Smodric, and then getting the finish. Yes, it hits Edison, and it just rolls over the line, no Man City defender is able to come back and get to it, but I think it's a goal either way, and it's something for Ipswich to cling their hats onto. Because the rest of the game didn't go exactly their way whatsoever. From there and on there, Man City were like, okay, fine. We let Ipswich Town have the moment. Now it's about us. With Manchester City getting 3 goals in very quick succession. And first of all, it is an Erling Haaland penalty. Leif Davis takes down Savinho, which was a VAR decision. And I do agree. I do think that Davis takes down Savinho. He gets no part of he goes to make a challenge. He then gets no part of the ball and gets the man. And I think, yeah, that is a penalty. Haaland takes him. There's nothing Murch can do about it. He dives the wrong way, and it's 1-1. I know you're in the lead for 5 minutes. And then is the one which is incredibly preventable. Ipswich Town playing out from the back, and Murch, the goalkeeper, with the ball at his feet, ends up taking a touch, getting dispossessed by Savinho, and then Kevin De Bruyne ends up putting in from outside the box, just rolls it into the back of the net. And that is one where that is completely preventable, and one where Ipswich need to be doing a lot better. I understand that you've got a style of play and a way that you're going to be playing, and you're going to stick to your principles, but in that situation, Man City just equalised, reigning Premier League champions. Don't make it easy for them to get in the lead. Keep it level, keep it 1-1, and then maybe you can show further up the pitch how you can hurt them. But don't make it easy for Man City to get back into the game. Kevin De Bruyne, very easy, and then Haaland gets a second. And yeah, this one was just a Kevin De Bruyne ball over the top. He's playing on the very far on the left-hand side. He's basically hugging the touchline. He plays it over the top. Haaland just takes it over the goalkeeper, and then he lobs it over Jacob Greaves, who's trying to make a run to block the shot. He can't do it, and all of a sudden it's 3-1. And then you think to yourself, in the space of 16 minutes, you've gone 1-0 up, and then you've gone 3-1 down so quickly. And it just shows a little bit of naivety. It shows obviously the lack of quality between Man City and Ipswich Town. But like I said, the goal right at the beginning is something for you to cling on to. From a Man City perspective, Yeah, Arsenal look a lot better this season, so cutting out sloppy goals like that, which could potentially hurt you. In this game, it didn't, but something like that is so easily preventable and one they need to be doing better in. But then, of course, Ilkay Gundogan making his, second Premier League debut for Manchester City. I mean, when you add Gundogan to the side, and the fact that you think about they still don't have Rodri, who's not back from his from the from being away with Spain during the Euros and still having a bit of rest. Phil Foden not in the match squad whatsoever. Man City have a couple of gears that they can still go up as well, and they're apparently being linked with a forward player as well. So yeah, all good signs for Man City. But of course, we've got to talk about Erling Haaland, his seventh Premier League hat trick, all at the Etihad, funnily enough. And this was in the 80th minute. He just ends up, I can't remember who it was, one of the Man City players just ends up dispossessing Ipswich Town right on the edge of the box. And then Haaland just screws it and just has a shot from the edge of the box, beats Muric, and he's got a hat trick and the match ball, and the robot is up and running in the Premier League as well. And I think, yeah, 2 games, 6 points, nothing much more you can ask for. Man City, top of the league. And for Ipswich Town, their season starts next week as they play Fulham at home. And I think that's the game where, their season really starts. And let's see how well they do against the side, which they could potentially get something from in Fulham. And the next game is Crystal Palace 0, West Ham United 2. And let's start off with West Ham, the winning side in this game. And let's start off with the first goal, which was Thomas Souček. And I think this is one where, West Ham have been soaking up a lot of pressure in the game. They have been playing better football in this game than last season. But they were struggling against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, I think, were probably the more fluid side, I'd say. But West Ham, at the end of the day, it's all about getting goals and getting 3 points. And that's exactly what they did. Aaron Bissaka's second half substitute ended up making a marauding run down the right hand side, ends up passing it to Bowen. Bowen, who ends up having a shot. It's a bit of a scramble in the box. The ball ends up falling to Thomas Souček, and he ends up putting the ball in the back of the net. And West Ham all of a sudden are 1-0 up. But then they go and make it 2. This time through Jared Bowen, an assist by Max Gilman, who ends up picking up the ball, dispossessing Crystal Palace on the edge of his box, runs up with a drive pass to Crystal Palace players, passes the ball to Jared Bowen in exit space, and he ends up driving through the West Ham defence and finishing it off to make it 2-0 as well. And what I want to say is I want to start up but really talking about Crystal Palace, because it feels like someone's burst the bubble at Crystal Palace, and it definitely feels like irony because West Ham, blow bubbles, but it feels like with the back end of last season, the games that Oliver Glasner had, there was a lot of momentum and positivity around the club, and throughout the course of the summer, I thought to myself, if they can keep the players that they have, maybe enforce a little bit, then Crystal Palace could be in for a really, really good season. But selling Michael Olise, it's hard to keep a hold of a player who shows world-class potential, and obviously he went to Bayern Munich, so you can't hold him back from that. But selling Joachim Andersen as well to Fulham, who are a side you probably say are roughly in the same position you are, I understand the money that came in, the age that Andersen is at, 28, 29 over the course of the season. There's no better time to be selling him, and I can understand the move, but again, it's just a bit, it just makes everyone feel a bit flat. You're selling Jordan Ayew as well to Leicester City. That one I can understand for £5 million plus 3 million add-ons. He's 32. He's not a regular starter week in, week out. You've bought in Kamada and Sarr, but does it impact your bench? I think it does. A couple of injuries, and you look at that Crystal Palace bench, and it's going to really lack a lot of quality. And anything about if Eze or Mateta get injured, then Crystal Palace might be in a little bit of trouble. So I do think that Crystal Palace really need to recruit well in the last few days of the transfer window. It definitely feels like Eddie Nketiah might be one that gets over the line. He might end up joining the club. It definitely feels like they need maybe a centre-back as well to replace Joachim Andersen. They've got the money. Maybe Lacroix coming in from Wolfsburg. He looks like a really promising talent. But there were just, hopes of maybe an outside challenge for some of the European places. Maybe the Conference League or the Europa League, not really Champions League. I don't think anyone's expecting that. But definitely feels like it's more the same. Sell your best players. Try and buy some younger players to replace them. Whereas it would have been nice just to see what would have happened if Crystal Palace were able to keep some of their best players. And, still Mark Gay's been heavily linked to Newcastle. If he's going to say, we're going to have to wait and see. And yeah, it definitely feels like a lot of negativity around Crystal Palace from what was a very optimistic end to last season. But West Ham, one player that I really want to highlight is one of the new signings, Max Gilman. I think getting 40 million Wolverhampton Wanderers perspective for Max Gilman from West Ham is a great bit of business from them, because I think they maybe overpaid a little bit. But when you think about what West Ham need, they conceded the most goals outside the bottom three, the three teams who got relegated last season. And that is not good enough for a team who want to be competing in the top 10, competing for the European places as well. And I think Kilman in this game did incredibly well. I think the fact that he was always there in the right place at the right times, the amount of clearances that he made, tackles he made, blocks he made, and the fact that, he got the assist for the second goal because of, his ability on the ball to run out of defence and drive with it, and then ended up finding Bone with the pass. I think he was absolutely phenomenal. And for me, I think he was actually West Ham's best player on the day and man of the match. And yeah, I just think going forward, the West Ham look a little bit promising. I think the game against Aston Villa could have gone either way. It was unfortunate that they didn't end up getting the win, but it's a tough side against Aston Villa, who made Champions League last season. But I think in this one, going away, beating Crystal Palace, yeah, that shows really to me a sign of intent of a side who are maybe on the up, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what West Ham can do in the games going forward. And next up is Fulham 2, Leicester City 1. And this was a very interesting game, and I was really looking forward to watching Fulham and Leicester to see how they play. Because last week, obviously, Fulham had to go against Man United, and Leicester were facing Tottenham Hotspur on the Monday Night Football. And so I really wanted to see how they would do in a game against this, where sides where the quality obviously wasn't a big six side, but one where the quality maybe is a little bit closer. But it was Fulham who ended up edging it out, and in my opinion, was a much better side on the day. An XG of 1.78, getting the 2 goals, but much the better side. And one player that I really wanted to talk about was Emile Smith-Rowe, getting his first goal for Fulham after he moved from Arsenal for £27 million with add-ons. And he ended up getting the first goal in this game in the 18th minute. It was a lovely advantage played by the referee. I think Munoz gets completely taken out, and Traore ends up getting onto the loose end of the ball. He ends up cutting inside onto his left foot and playing the ball out to Emile Smith-Rowe, who makes the run from the left-hand side out to in. And I really think it's underrated, but I want to highlight Alex Iwobi in this play, because as Emile Smith-Rowe is running through onto the goal, James Justin ends up getting blocked by Alex Iwobi, and I think Justin ends up appealing for it, being like, he blocked me. But blocking is an acceptable part of the game. You can do that, and he does end up blocking him, but he ends up doing so just enough where it's not a foul, but enough that it causes enough impact that Justin can end up getting to Smith-Rowe, and Smith-Rowe ends up converting it and starting it home for his first goal for Fulham. But then in the 30th minute, Leicester do come back into it. A set play from Buonanotte, who ends up taking the corner. Buonanotte, who I thought had a pretty good game in this one, if I'm being honest. And Wesley Faust, who ends up heading it in from the corner. Goal gets disallowed for offside initially. Jamie Vardy is interfering with the goalkeeper. But it gets overturned, and in my opinion, rightly so. I don't think that Vardy was having enough of an impact on the game where it impacted Leonard's ability to stop that goal from going in. And that's one where I like it, because it is a subjective call. De Vea went to the official and just said, you know what, just have a look for yourself. He did so, and I agree with this one, I'll be perfectly honest. But it was Fulham who ended up getting the win from this game. Alex Iwobi, as the ball gets played in from Bassey to Robinson on the left-hand side, Robinson ends up looping it over the top of Leicester's defence with his weaker right foot. Iwobi runs onto it, and he ends up putting it into the bottom corner. And in that one, I think it's very disappointing from Leicester's perspective, as they just switched off. But Fulham in this game set up with the 4-3-3, and they did that against Man United as well, and I wanted to see if they're going to do that in this one against Leicester City at home as well, and they did. It was Sacha Lucas sitting at the base in the middle of and either side of him, he had on the right he had Andres Pereira, on the left he had Emile Smith-Rowe. It's one where, if you look at the heat maps of Iwobi and Smith-Rowe, and if you try and say who's playing left wing, both of them are pretty much playing in the same position according to the heat maps. It's only when it's out of position that you realise Iwobi's out wide marking the space, and Emile Smith-Rowe is a bit more central. And their interchange was something that was really, really good in both games. One coming inside, one going outside, and their chemistry going forward, I think, is going to be crucial for Fulham. And for Leicester City, I think they were a bit lopsided and it was a bit asymmetric, but not in terms of the play. Yes, the play was coming down a bit more down the right hand side in general, but it wasn't too much. But I actually think the players on the right hand side were better than the players on the left hand side. I definitely think about it, and I think the Buonanotte on that right hand side, as well as Fatuau, who's playing kind of like right wing back, I think they're a lot better than the players on the left hand side for Leicester City, and one where they were a bit lopsided in terms of the threat coming from the right and the left. But I do also want to point out that Mads Harmison, I think, had a fantastic game in goal. 4 saves, 2 high claims. He could have maybe done a little bit better with the goals, but I think everything apart from the goals, I think he had a really good game. It's one where a bit worrying for Leicester, because in this game against side against Fulham, if you're a newly promoted side, Fulham are probably, how good are you? They're, a good side to judge your abilities against. As one where I think Fulham comfortably looked the better side. If it wasn't for a set piece, then yeah, I think Fulham would have won this game comfortably. But it doesn't get any easier for Leicester. They're at home next against Aston Villa, and for Fulham away versus Ipswich. This one where Fulham can get a win from that, then 6 points from 9 is really, really impressive. And the next game is Bournemouth 1, Newcastle 1. And before we come to the game and the goals themselves, we actually got to talk about the controversial decisions towards the end of the game. The first one, and I think the most important one to talk about, is the Ouattara goal which got disallowed by VAR. It was given on the field, and if you haven't seen it, the ball comes in from the Bournemouth corner. Ouattara tries to go to head the ball into the back of the net. It ends up coming off his, well, this is the debate, the shoulder slash arm, and ends up going to the back of the net. No Newcastle player appeals to it on the pitch, and Bournemouth think they've scored. VAR, after looking at it, decide that they need to tell the referee to overturn the decision because it is a clear and obvious error, and the fact that it is a factual handball, and therefore the referee needs to overturn it. And a lot's been made of this one, and I think rightly so, because I do think the referee not the referee, I think the referee on the field made the right decision. I think the VAR made a completely wrong decision. Because of the fact that, first of all, there's got to be a high bar now for interfering in on-field referee and their decisions, and I think that this was absolutely not one of them. This was arguably subjective, so you should probably leave with the on-field referee. But because some photos have come out, and if they are true, they're absolutely horrendous, of the PGMO and their refereeing guidelines, and it's where the armpit does and doesn't end, and whether it's handball or not. And if you're using that as a guideline, I think that's fair, but to enforce it so specifically without taking the context of the game and what the images that you see on the pitch, I think is ludicrous. Because there's one thing which is having an issue with the laws of the game, and there's another issue with having an issue in how it's enforced in terms of the refereeing. And in this one, I have no disagreements with the laws of the game saying if it's a shoulder, it's a goal. If it's your arm, it's not a goal because it's handball. That's fine. What the issue I have is the fact that for Ouattara to get the ball into the back of the net with a shoulder, the amount of power he needs to generate, the ball has to have gone in through his shoulder, not his arm. If it hits his arm, that ball doesn't go into the back of the net, doesn't hit the back of the goal. It doesn't just crawl over the line, it hits the back of the goal with power because of the fact I think it comes off the shoulder rather than the arm. Because if it's off the arm, then you'll be able to clearly see it doesn't have enough power to go into the back of the net. And so I don't have an issue with the law. I have an issue with the enforcement of the law because one, VAR felt like they had to intervene because it was a factual error, which it wasn't. I think it was completely subjective, and more people, definitely more people, 95% of people that I've seen are saying that's a goal for Bournemouth and not one that should be disallowed. So I have an issue with the VAR and the interference of the game there, because the fact that they think it's a fact, it's not a fact, and the fact that they think it's a handball, I think most people don't think it's a handball. So wrong decision by VAR, wrong of them to intervene in the first place whatsoever. And the fact that Bournemouth probably should have won this game. And the fact that it was so late on in the game, it was such a pivotal moment. So, yeah, I think it was a bad decision by VAR. The second one, the Joelinton one on on Neto, the goalkeeper for Bournemouth. This one, I'm a bit 50-50 on because of the fact that Neto catches the ball. He tries to run out with the start of play because Bournemouth are trying to go for the win, which wouldn't have happened if that VAR one... if the VAR just didn't intervene in the first place. But as a result, Neto ends up catching the ball, running out with it very quickly, and Joelinton tries to stop him to stop the counter-attack. And in doing so, he inadvertently grabs Neto round the neck. And a lot of people saying that's red. A lot of people saying no, it's not just yellow. I think the issue I have with it personally is the fact that Joelinton, completely fine. If you want to take out a player and stop a counter-attack, that's fine. But there's a height limit. I mean, shoulders and below is what I'd say. Just rugby tackle them if you have to. But even if you're rugby tackling them, then you're doing it, waist and mid-drift down. You're not doing it that high. The fact that it's that high, he could have potentially seen the red card. And if he did see a red card, I don't think he could have had any complaints. And I think it's one where it's just on the line. If the referee gave the red card, no one said anything else. The referee gave the yellow and you go, is it enough for VAR to overturn it? I don't think so. But I do think that Joelinton is a very, very lucky boy and he got away with one there. But to actually talk about the game of football itself, Bournemouth actually took the lead. It was Tavernier with a Semenyo assist, and I think it was really good work by Semenyo. Ended up dispossessing Joe Linton 10 yards away from their own box, and then Semenyo ended up driving in and putting the ball across the box. And I have a real issue with not Tavernier, Livramento here, who ends up not tracking Tavernier and just watches it. We know Livramento has the pace to able to make it back and to stop the ball from just being a simple tap in for Tavernier. He ends up not running back, and he ends up just watching Tavernier go past him. Tavernier has an absolute tap in, and I have a real issue with Livramento there because he should be doing much better for a player who's starting ahead of the likes of Kieran Trippier, who's been muted with a move away from Newcastle. So yeah, Livramento should do much better there. But Newcastle ended up getting back into the game through Anthony Gordon, and it's one where Harvey Barnes is out on the left hand side. He just ends up standing up, new signing Araujo, puts the ball into the back of the box, into the back area of the penalty area, and it's just a simple tap in for Anthony Gordon. Where is Neto in that instance? I'm not sure what he's doing, because either come for the ball or stay on the line. Don't be in no man's land in the middle there. But yeah, one where I thought Bournemouth was a better side on the day, 2.2 XG versus 1.69 of Newcastle. One where on another day, Evan Nielsen, the new signing from Porto, could have maybe had 2 goals in this game. I think not anything to worry about for Bournemouth. Newcastle could have looked better in the first game, getting Fabian Schär sent off. Not helpful, but only just managing to get the win. This one, drawing 1-1 away to Bournemouth. Yeah, it's not the perfect start to Newcastle. Definitely make it harder for themselves than they should. And I think from Bournemouth's perspective, yeah, another solid season for them. And next we'll move on to Liverpool 2, Brentford 0. And this was just, in my opinion, a solid win for new manager Arne Slot at his in front of his new crowd at Anfield. And I think it's one where Brentford had a couple of chances. They didn't really take the most of them. And Liverpool just ultimately just had possession of the ball, controlled the game, and just beat Brentford to that slowly. And in the first goal, it was such a well-worked goal from Liverpool's perspective. But from Brentford, I think they'll be so disappointed, especially Thomas Frank. It was a Brentford corner. Then Liverpool ended up clearing it. And the ball is a 50-50 between Salah and one of the Brentford players on the edge of the box. And the Brentford player lose it. And I think it was really poorly done. And Salah ends up playing in Jota. Jota and Diaz 2v2. And at the end of it, Jota makes a pass to Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz ends up running with it and scores a goal. And it is such a disappointing goal from the Brentford perspective. First of all, they have a 2v1 on the short corner if they want to take it. Decide not to take it. The ball comes into the box. They are millimeters away from one of the Brentford players getting on the end of it first. They don't. A Liverpool player does. And then to lose the 50-50 on the edge of the box. And then the 2v2 players should be doing a lot better. Roslev, who should just continue running back towards his own goal, ended up deciding that he wanted to come out and try and make a challenge on Diogo Jota. He fails to do that, and Luis Diaz is one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And I think, yeah, very good goal for Liverpool to score on the counter-attack. Very Jurgen Klopp-esque from last season and season before. But from Brentford's perspective, really poor. And then the first half kind of continues, and it's pretty much more the same. Nothing really to report. In the second half, Liverpool end up getting the second goal, 70th minute, from Mo Salah this time. Cannot stop him from scoring, especially in the new season. Nothing has changed. And this one, assist from Luis Diaz. And again, this was a very soft goal for Brentford to concede. Another one where Thomas Frank would be disappointed. Brentford are building up from the back on the left-hand side. But then we're getting dispossessed immature by a new signing, Fabio Carvalho, who maybe still got allegiances to Liverpool. And Luis Diaz ends up with the ball. Mo Salah ends up being on side, running through, and just slotting it home to make it 2-0. And yeah, I think this was a good result for Liverpool, getting 2-0 win, another clean sheet, more goals at home, and now they're going to the next game against Man United. There wasn't really too much to say about it, if being honest. And from Brentford's perspective, I think, yeah, just a bad day of the office. I think defensive certain situations, they made wrong decisions too often, and it led to them being punished. And I think apart from that, it was just a solid win for Liverpool, a bad day of the office of Brentford, and I think both teams take it and move on. And the last game from the game week was Southampton 0, Nottingham Forest 1. And I actually want to start off with Southampton here, losing the side who lost the game on the day, but one of the newly promoted sides. So I was really keen to watch what they did in their home game, because I was impressed with them against Newcastle. And I was impressed with them again to a point, because I think they're a very good side on the eye, who build it from the back, who play lovely football. However, that needs to materialize into something. And despite the fact that in the last game against Newcastle, they got them down to 10 men and they didn't capitalise and they weren't able to score. And this one at home, I really thought, okay, Nottingham Forest aside, probably on your level, let's see what you've got. And they didn't deliver at all. Yes, 65% possession, but only 5 shots. Only one of them on target, which was one from range from Kyle Walker-Peters. 0 big chances, and you were at home as well. An XG of 0.14. That is simply not acceptable when you're at home, when you're playing a side like Nottingham Forest, which you could get something from the game as well. And Nottingham Forest, who were more than happy not to have possession of the ball, because when they did have it, they were absolutely clinical. 35% possession, but 23 shots in comparison, 8 on target, 6 big chances, an XG of 2.45. And you could tell they had a lot to do, because Alex McCarthy, ink of a 7 saves that he had to make in this game. And I think it really highlighted the fact that possession isn't everything. And Southampton, I'm not sure they got the force to keep him in the Premier League. Yes, Brendan Diaz. Yes, Adam Armstrong did well in Championship, but is he a Premier League striker? Is Cameron Archer, who they bought in from Aston Villa, is he going to get them the goals when he couldn't do for Sheffield United? Yeah, a lot of question marks with Southampton going forward. But before we go, we've got to talk about the goal. 17th minute from Morgan Gibbs-White. Nottingham Forest at this point are just building up the pressure. It becomes a bit of a shot, and another one being blocked. It becomes a bit of a melee in the penalty area. Sugawara ends up trying to clear the ball off the line. He ends up making a bad clearance, because it all ends up falling to Morgan Gibbs-White, who just has a tap in to make it in, and it was 1-0 to Nottingham Forest, and that was the game. And yeah, I'm really disappointed with Southampton, because especially at home, I think that you definitely have to give the same Irish guys something better to cheer about. They definitely didn't do that. And I think for Nottingham Forest, for Nuno, at home to Bournemouth, Bournemouth are a good side. That's a good draw. You take it. Now going away to the Liverpool side, getting 3 points. 4 points now from the first 2 games. And now they go back home to play against Wolves. They could get something from the game. And for Southampton, away to Brentford, they have to try and get something from that game to try and get them a bit of confidence. Because if they don't, they could end up in a little bit of a rut. So, worrying signs for Southampton. Very positive signs for Nottingham Forest. Yeah, and I think Nuno will be very happy with those 3 points, and Russell Martin will be scratching his head at how Southampton didn't even lay a glove on Nottingham Forest, and I think that's a worry. And there we have it. That is all 10 games reviewed from Game Week 2 in the Premier League. Thank you everyone for joining me. Sorry there's no Toby. He was a bit busy this week, but he will be back next week to review all the games from Match Day 3 in the Premier League as well. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe. It really helps us out. If you're watching on Spotify, then please give us 5 stars. Leave us a comment. Let us know how you did. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.